Our next session is Unifying Global Mobile Video and Display Advertising. We're going to have a panel to discuss understanding how the worlds of data, measurement, mobile and video converge internationally with leading marketing brands and agencies. I'd like to welcome back on stage Mr. Michael Bayler.
Certainly in the sessions I've been in today, the theme that's emerged time and time again is the imperative of integration, of pulling together technologies, pulling together processes, and also pulling together the way we measure the many, many different ways that we use now to reach consumers and to build value for brands. This session is really to explore that. It's called Unifying Global, is the sound gone funny again? Unifying Global Mobile Video and Display Advertising. And I have two practitioners from two quite different businesses to come up and talk with me on a panel now. Please give a good welcome to Pete Hanford, who's the head of sales for Infectious Media. This is where we clap. Pete, come on up. And Jeremy Arditi, who's the SVP International of Teeds. All right, brother. Guys, talk to me, Jeremy. Tell me, I know that the company's well known in our space, but just give a quick snapshot of where the company's at the moment, just to get us started.
Sure. So Teeds has very rapidly become the single largest video ad ecosystem in the span of 5 years, as measured by ComScore. And we've done that in a way that has really created a new deal for publishers and for users, and ultimately for agencies and advertisers, in giving users an experience that's not forced and thrusted upon them, one in which they have a lot of control, and in giving publishers an opportunity to monetize inventory that previously or prior to our technology they couldn't really monetize through video advertising. And ultimately what that's allowed our clients to do is no longer have to make a big choice between reach and quality within the video space, which has long been one of the major challenges in video. There are a lot of high volume, high reach opportunities, but not necessarily in environments that are always the best suited for certain brands or for certain campaigns.
Super, thank you. Pete, just talk us briefly through Infectious Media. Obviously, I think most people here know the company, but just give us an update on where you are.
Yeah, certainly. So Infectious Media, we are an independent specialist programmatic media buying agency. We buy on behalf of advertisers across mobile, video and display across all formats in multiple regions and territories across the world.
Oh, excellent. And tell me, carrying on from that, Pete, presumably the company, and you included obviously, is seeing this convergence of mobile, video and display, and presumably your existing platform covers those three dimensions quite, either individually or partly together. Are you seeing certainly in the way clients are coming to you, are you seeing this sense of the need for a convergence between those three what work once quite disparate elements?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as programmatic, as the supply side landscape of programmatic has evolved, I think it's forcing the three to come together more. So, programmatic started out very much as the longer tail of inventory and was very much a DR medium or seen as a DR medium. And so video was less relevant to that. Video was seen more as a brand medium. And I think that has changed a lot as more video inventory has opened up, and in fact formats like Teeds have created the supply side that means actually now we can go in and buy programmatic video, and that's growing. It's a huge driver of growth actually, and that means that it's no longer about DR budgets as well, and there's this convergence happening between the money flows from a client perspective, that they can actually utilise programmatic for all forms of media buying now. And I think we're seeing mobile is catching up. We felt it was a little bit behind video with some of the challenges of the formats that you have on mobile, but that's certainly catching up as native formats are becoming online.
I think most of us may have been at Mobile World Congress earlier this year, and I would argue that the event was perhaps even too dominated by programmatic. You couldn't turn around. Clearly, it's become a point of obsession with the mobile space. But back to the previous thing. In TEEDS, how are you beginning to feel that clients are coming to you with more sophisticated requirements in terms of this subject of integration?
Yeah, I think there's clearly a very wide range of sophistication. There are clients that have really embraced many layers of the ad tech stack, who are using very clearly defined definitions when it comes to measurability, accountability, on things like viewability, for example. And then at sort of the lower end of the spectrum, we still see a lot of people who unfortunately haven't fully embraced those, are still kind of grappling with some of those challenges. Now, obviously, we're in such a rapidly evolving landscape where it's difficult to set standards, or certainly, it's difficult to get a lot of different bodies to buy into those standards. That's slowing down, part of the adoption of the integration.
Yeah. And where do you see, Jeremy, where do you see the sticking points? One of the things that strikes me immediately is it's very, very difficult to put universal value on what really even now are three very, very different tactics. Although, of course, we've got a slight category area here because, of course, display and video play across mobile as well. But if we focus, for example, on video and display advertising, is it not the case that the metrics and the value that are put across those two different tactics are quite different on the agency and client side?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair point. I think we've got a party next door.
We are not invited.
We were not invited, clearly not.
So we better wrap up.
Got invited to the wrong room.
Yeah, we're in the wrong room.
So I think generally speaking, there's a need for further accountability on branding activity. I think the industry has become very good at measuring the impact and ROI of direct response. I think on the branding side, it's still, there's still a lot of room for improvement. I'm not even talking about, obviously the non-digital world, which is even further sort of down the line there. So we are seeing, though, to your question, we are seeing obviously video as primarily a heavily branding exercise, but we're seeing advertisers and agencies who are more sophisticated in video use more interactive features. We're seeing them use first-party and third-party data in a more intelligent way, so that video becomes not just an exercise in pouring more people into the top of the funnel, but it actually allows them to move sort of more mid-funnel. And when you couple that with smarter display, when you look at display on mobile, historically it's been mediocre at best in many ways because of some of the format challenges and some of the experience challenges. I think that's improving, as Pete was saying, with the integration of certain native formats. We've recently launched a display unit which takes the same real estate we use on the page, so within the heart of editorial content. We're also now helping our clients retarget or re-engage users that they have touched on video campaigns or through video campaigns. And doing that on mobile devices.
And I'd also like to invite Pete into the subject, but in terms of my work, one of the things I come across a lot is that digital has certainly, won its colours as a driver of transaction, as a driver of eyeball, but there is still a big question mark over its ability to build brands. And I think the introduction of video engagement into that equation, and particularly as you were saying, Jeremy, the ability to use data to actually drive that and then also retarget with more transactional offers starts to balance the books a little bit more so that we're not just necessarily driving transactions at the expense of brand equity or just building brand equity at the expense of transactions. Are you finding in your business that clients are willing to understand that digital can do both those things rather than just the transactional piece?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's, I think there's clients are starting to understand that, and the one question that is common across every advertiser I speak to, and I speak to a lot of advertisers, the one single question that they all have is, how do we properly measure, and whether that's display, video, programmatic, the whole piece, how do we really measure this? And on transactional e-commerce, it's easier, and we're doing a lot of work around incrementality, which is really interesting with viewability as a key to that. And I was in a panel earlier where they were talking about, actually, we need to start doing something about viewability, and actually a lot of our clients are, and they're using it as a proxy to incrementality. But coming back to brand metrics, there's lots of data points that can all be optimized, but coming back to one, kind of agreeable metric that is defining that that's a brand building metric is kind of the common question that's being asked. And I don't think that we've solved yet.
The old thing about the value of an engaged consumer, comes back and haunts us again and again. I used to think of that as going behind the eyeball. You just don't know what's going on behind there. You might be able to capture the eyeball, but what's going on behind it, the degree of actual engagement, very, very hard to establish.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sure.
Well, we still see fairly large advertisers who haven't quite, really implemented systematic measurements on metrics like viewability. We always joke that for 100 years the industry has been saying that 50% of advertising works and 50% doesn't work, and you don't know which of the 50% that doesn't work. What we know for certain is that if it's not seen, it's probably not the 50% that's working. And which is why we're so focused on bringing a viewability guarantee to our clients.
But somewhere in that 50%, it was John Wanamaker, wasn't it, the department? So funny if it came up, as it always does, in a conversation earlier. I think there's a slightly more subtle point that he was making there, rather than just, I'm spending 50%, my advertising budget is 50% too large and my results are 50% too small. I think to some extent he was commenting on the fact that quite a lot of what advertising does is and will probably remain slightly mysterious. And I think very often that quote is taken as a challenge to particularly digital media to somehow slice the budget in half and produce twice the results. The fact of the matter is that measuring branding efficacy is something something I'm really quite excited about and challenged by. Measuring brand building efficacy in any channel remains extremely difficult, and joining those dots remains very challenging. Let's just we've got a few minutes. I think we've got about 10 or 15 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes. What we've been talking about all today on and off is this thing about integration. And what do you guys think, Pete, what do you think actually needs to happen in order for the implicit streamlining and effectiveness that we're talking about here across these three areas, these three tactical areas? What kind of needs to happen? There's obviously a technical integration, and to some extent there's an integration of planning and buying. But is there not also some sort of structural change on the client side, on the agency side, that needs to happen? Because there is still a lot of siloing going on. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. We see, from an integration point of view, we see all of those things. I think data integration is absolutely key, and certainly in a programmatic world, which is increasingly becoming more and more things within media. But there's an interesting shift around organisational structure, and we do a lot of work with this with big advertisers that are often siloed between brand marketing and digital marketing, and we see them starting to come together more to try and solve this almost planning problem that a consumer doesn't see brand and digital. That's just not how a consumer works, as we all know. But seeing huge challenges with the organisational shift, where actually it's often down to measurement and individual KPIs within an organisation. A brand marketer cares about reach and frequency, and a digital marketer often cares about very different metrics. They should all care about selling more product, but bringing them together, actually integration's key parts of that, and so data to bring them together. And a great example of how data can be used in planning to make planning and buying more effective is something that John Lewis did a few years ago, where they used their data from programmatic to inform where they should be buying for their Christmas campaign in terms of a homepage takeover, and then executing that homepage takeover with dynamic creative messaging, executed programmatically. But it's because they had that data in the first place that they were able to integrate it into their brand planning, which is something that they just hadn't thought of before. So it's the data is bringing those two teams together to deliver more effective, and that campaign was way more effective than the previous activity that they'd run. So I think that's really important.
To some extent, I think there's credit to John Lewis, really, because that takes, I mean, we saw the same thing with Dove, I think, with the Sketches campaign a while back, where they actually identified pockets of interest based on majorly social activity across the world, and then began doing quick buys and quick executions across that area. It's very interesting to see the thing being turned on its head in that way, and that, of course, was a very successful campaign. If Jeremy, what's the one thing you'd like to see in the industry coming down the pike, say in the next year or two, that you feel would really unblock, acceleration on the client side, and also a real recognition of the value that a business like Teads is creating?
Sure. I guess just before I answer that, or related to that, I think there definitely needs to be a better alignment amongst the different counterparts, agency and advertiser side, around the key business outcomes. And that is critical to helping break down the silos that still exist in a number of places, even though the trend seems to be going in the right direction.
Yes.
Then,
just to stop you on that, what would a key business outcome look like from your point of view, as opposed to what we're driving at the moment? Is it just sales, or are we just talking about harder?
I think so. It depends. It obviously depends on the specific challenges of the brand. Ultimately, yes, everyone's trying to drive more sales, but some people have to approach that in a variety of different ways. Challenger brands are going to be looking at maybe driving more favorability, and they've got much more of an uphill battle on getting people to ultimately choose their brands when they're considering amongst a few different products. So it might be that spark, which is one level beneath the sales, but ultimately drives towards helping them grow their revenues.
And of course, market position, customer advocacy, there's a whole lot of things that could be plugged into it that aren't necessarily job one in a media plan. Pete, what do you, sorry, go ahead.
I had an interesting conversation earlier today, and I won't tell you who it was on with and what it was about, but on this topic of, a business outcome. And in this business, they have one single objective that's being set from the top down, which is actually about changing consumer behavior, which for this business would end up in selling more product at a higher margin. So that's their one single objective being pushed down. Yep. And I thought it was really interesting about how that then filters into their suppliers, between agencies and right down through to tech vendors, about how they can actually respond to that challenge and do something about it. And I think by having that very clear business objective, gives people the chance to come together to actually come up with a solution to it. And I think integration will no doubt be at the heart of that. Technology, data, planning, agencies working together all becomes part of that.
I think it's also easy in this world of data and stacks and DSPs and SSPs and DMPs to forget the user and make sure the user as an experience is having or seeing something that's positive, for them. And the way that historically we've copied, certainly in the video space, we've tried to copy the TV model and bring it online, and that's posed a whole set of challenges. And when you look at the rise of ad blocker adoption in so many markets at such high percentages, you realize that we've as an industry have forgotten to put give the user their seat at the table. And that's certainly something that we see. I mean, we're very focused, as I said at the outset, on sort of this new deal where we can bring video in a way that's not forced upon the user. And what we're seeing, certainly from the brand metrics, is that their response is overwhelmingly more positive, including when you look at the further down the funnel metrics like purchase intent. As an example.
Yeah. Struck me while you were talking, by the way, that one of the things that I think we've got wrong in recent years is the consumer already has a seat at the table. In some ways, it is their table.
It is their table. Yeah.
Now, and to some extent, what we're doing now is trying to establish a seat for ourselves at the table and to get to hold on to it. How are we off the time? Are we sort of done? I think, is there a question from the audience that is burning that anyone would like to ask? I'm aware it's late in the day, so it's probably an entirely unreasonable demand.
We're almost the last ones keeping people from white wine, I think.
That's right. And there's our flash. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Jeremy and for Pete. Thank you very much.